You are listening to WXRWLP Milwaukee on 104.1 FM and on riverwestradio.com everywhere. Now you can also listen by telling your smart speaker to play River West Radio. Support for this program comes from Collectivo Coffee, dedicated to keeping Milwaukee's bike riding community rolling with bike pumps available for use in all Collectivo cafes. More info is available in cafes and at collectivocoffee.com. This is Cinema Fireside, and if you're listening live, it's a slightly rainy day in Milwaukee, and the rambunctious intellectual fellas next door in the other stage just had a fine show, and I'd tell the dudes they were so full of joy that I said, I gotta be bringing up this fill in 5 seconds, man. So they were very succinct in their understanding and immediately closed the curtain, as one does, as the professionals they are. So thanks, guys. You were tremendous. Absolutely. And Rabbi appears on the scene. It's a tripped out night in River West. Lots of hot chicks and weird people abound, man. But that's the way it is. Every city has its ebbs and flows, and it's a little bit of a rainy night here, and I want to thank my colleague for providing the by proxy dinner tonight, a steak burrito, which was delicious, even though the instructions were a bit tripped out, saying to poke all these holes in it and the sides, the top, the bottom, while it's frozen, and then soak it underneath water. I was like, well, man, this ain't happening. Trying to, puncture this like a iceberg. So I got it. Oh, man, that's a heck of a pumpkin, Rabbi. Wicked. Bring that sucker in. Excellent. Gabe, thanks for calling in. Rabbi is bringing in the Halloween spirit for sure with a nice sized pumpkin. Excellent, 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 excellent. And actually, the co-host of the show with Zav, I ran into that dude at the coffee shop at the lake. Was it last night? Yeah. And that was a trip. So we were in line together and shared some friendly words. Yep. Excellent, my man. So, yeah, when you start the show, it's like being on automatic pilot. It's not like, oh, man, I'm going to go on the air live, tripping out. It's, you just watch the seconds and you have what you have to read as an opener, and, you know the mixer, you bring the faders up, etc., etc. You go about your business. So, film-wise, at the university, it was actually Doors Open Milwaukee, or Open Doors, whichever, this weekend. So I hit 4 places: the Milwaukee Theater, the Mecca Arena, Northwestern Mutual Life Building, went way to the top and looked over the city, and the MGIC building from the Super 70s. So it's a fun time, What was amazing, though, is being in the arena, like where the Who played in '82 and all of that stuff, and I was like the only one in that arena, save for an usher way down on the other side on the floor, and I just sat in this huge place in utter silence and utter brightness, thinking, man, all my friends were here like 35, 40 years ago, and now it's just utter bright silence. It was a very, 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 very weird, powerful set of moments for sure. Yeah, I won't forget that one. And so after Doors Open Milwaukee, hit the university to see a 16 millimeter print of Samuel Fuller's 1964 offering, The Naked Kiss. Samuel Fuller does very melodramatic B films, and The Naked Kiss, just like Shock Corridor, falls into line with that. Oddly enough, I saw the big red one on 35 in the theater when it came out, probably around 38 years ago. Remember, it had, I think, Lee Marvin and Mark Hamill in it, a war film. That was Samuel Fuller as well. Yeah, The Naked Kiss. It's done with a particular style, so it has its rewards. I mean, it's very overacted physically and in the delivery of dialogue and so forth. But his films are worth seeing. I think, if I'm correct, yeah, because sometimes I would get Sam Peckinpah and Sam Fuller mixed up, but it was Sam Fuller, I think, that makes an appearance in Wim Wenders' '77 offering, The American Friend with Dennis Hopper. So I think that's Fuller with the eye patch. I don't want to get it because I may be totally mixed up because Nicholas Ray also has an eye patch, and I know one of them didn't really need to wear the eye patch. I don't think they were wearing it at times for effect. So I mean, if you're familiar with the American Friend, is it Nicholas Ray or is it Sam Fuller? I think it's Sam Fuller. Don't know, but it was a rewarding time. It was at 5 p.m. and I would stop at the library first to try to get a coffee, but the coffee shop was closed, so I was at the university library doing my things. What's up, Rabbi? What is that? What's that's a tomato? Oh, yeah, I've never seen a tomato like that before. But I've got like about 5 tomatoes at the crib, so I got to eat one a day. What do you do? What do you do with this? What is this? Take and eat it. Okay. All right. Amen. Thanks, Rabbi. Never seen a tomato like that before. So anyway, I think there's like 3 tomatoes left at the crib that have to be eaten, whatever, before they go south for sure. Gabe, hang tight, my man. So 5 p.m. rewarding screening of Phoenix reappears. Excellent. How are you, my man? Good seeing you. Yeah, if you want to know who he is, Atmore the Scarier does show his picture. He is the man in shades, for sure, and whipping out that religious book back again. Keep it dry. Excellent. He bows once more. Thank you. So 5 p.m. screening, and I was like, oh man, I'm probably tired on a Saturday night. I'd have to look at my journal to see what the heck I did. Probably went straight home and started to read or something. I don't know. But anyway, so additionally, film-wise, cinematic-wise, thanks to my partner, it's The Rite from 1969, From the Life of the Marionettes from 1980. Got to check that out at home. Just immensely rewarding Bergman offerings, Ingmar Bergman. These were harder to find. They weren't usually accessible as was like Shame, Scenes from a Marriage, Persona, Hour of the Wolf, Cries and Whispers, all within that kind of era. And so it's truly, truly a treat to see these harder to find Bergman films. After the Rehearsal is definitely on the radar. That has to be figured out. I have to see that as well. Actually, I have the script book of From the Life of the Marionettes, and I've read that. I'm in the middle of reading Scenes from a Marriage. I did read, I think, the stage play version. I have a book of 3 Bergman plays, and I think he adapted Scenes from a Marriage into a stage play, so I read that, but I actually have the full-length play, or not full-length script from the film itself, Scenes from a Marriage, which is very, very rewarding to read in the middle of that. Also, reading Miller, the playwright, analysis of Arthur Miller, so reading those. And in the new Cine East is a article on Sam Fuller, about his experiences with writing scripts for hire before he was a director, his disappointment in the way that they were treated, and then he eventually went on to direct. And again, like I say, he makes pretty over the top melodramatic films. He shot quarters, great, and all of that stuff. Well, it's dubiously acted, but they're well worth seeing. But yeah, that Bergman, that rich black and white, the innovation, not unlike Orson Welles with the camera, is stunning at times. It's really emotionally riveting, some of these Bergman films. I mean, I've watched his films throughout my life, and he's made many, because a lot of them were actually features that had appeared on, were made for television, that are becoming available. And it's just really the true essence of art cinema. And like you have a close-up of someone kind of like hiding out in the shadows, and someone opens the door, and it's a quick zoom out into a 2-shot or so. It's just like, wow, that's stunning. And would have been great to really be even more exposed to things like that in film school during the formative years of one's career in their field. Just because that when we talk about film, I don't talk with film to people because there's no connection, there's no form of communication whatsoever, and films don't excite except for, like I say, things like the Rite and From the Life of the Marionettes, where it's like all of these cinematic possibilities are exposed. But when you get into these conventional conversations about conventional films, there's an immediate and certain spiritual and intellectual death that awaits within seconds. All right, Gabe, my man, hope you're doing really well. It's autumn. There's a lot to do. It's an incredible life. Try to always, and then I've read Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. I've read The Exorcist by William Blatty. I've read Psycho by Robert Bloch. And now I'm reading Carrie by Stephen King. I'm trying to hit some of the fundamental contemporary novels in that genre throughout the years. Just to get I've read a heck of a lot of Poe, and one of the few that I've read his only novel, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, and have read a lot of Lovecraft. And I know that these are very obvious choices. There's many more. When you start going a little deeper, you get into Shirley Jackson and so on and so forth. And there's lots of wonders in. Again, like I say, a survey of modern, not contemporary, of modern horror in literature and film is a great guidebook. Is Stephen King's Danse Macabre, published I think in the late 70s or early 80s, and that's good. I mean, I'm speaking about that because it is Halloween time now. It's the split between autumn and Halloween, where you can study plays, and you can also delve into the realm of horror. And speaking of that, I was listening to, they said Dimension X. Dimension X is usually more like speculative fiction, but this seemed to be about horror. But anyway, it reminded me of Phantasm. Remember these guys that were directors and that were growing up listening to radio dramas because that's what was on. And all of a sudden I'm hearing about a hearse, and I'm hearing about people being made into dwarves, and I'm thinking, wow, Phantasm, where'd that come from? Gabe, are you ready to roll, my man? I hope you are. This is your heads up. And listeners, thanks for listening in. We have Gabe Van Handel, I hope, live from Kansas City. Do we?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thanks, Gabe. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Can you, my man,
Mark,
can you hear me when I'm...
I can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You rock, dude.
Sam Fuller is an interesting filmmaker. You bring him up. He's made numerous films in numerous genres. He's sort of played all over the map. And when it comes to sort of like the archetypes and the architects of sort of modern machismo, masculine art house, mainstream art house filmmaking, a lot of the bones for which those stories and those films and those tropes and these moments and this type of sort of multi-genre, multifaceted, sensual cinema of the aesthetics, a lot of that comes from these filmmakers that were dancing along the line between art house authorial authorship. That's like saying authorship, I know, but and like conventional B cinema. When we say B cinema, we mean like more in the prospects of genre, like science fiction, crime, film noir, westerns, stuff dealing with these sort of set in tropes, set in types of characterization, set types of sentimentality, melodrama, and maudlin connectivity. Samuel Fuller is one of these like bone, like I want to say like sensitive machismo, where there's this type of hard-earned type of lived-in masculinity that's frayed around the edges, or that hints at being frayed in more than it actually shows the desperation or the down in the dirt qualities of being broken down. It's hinted at that it's all internalized. A lot of it, not all of it. But Samuel Fuller, Sam Peckinpah, Howard Hawks, John Carpenter to some extent in terms of some of the influences upon his work, and he sort of provided in that vein as well. And of course, the indelible and the one and only Walter Hill that sort of did it better than anyone else, and did it in a more disguised fashion than any of those other precursors. But Howard Hawks, in some ways, in his time, he was sort of considered just a studio craftsman, and over time, his films, as being individually revered and then sort of realized that they form a canon, has sort of been monumentalized into this sort of Mount Rushmore type idea of a cinema hero. Howard, John Huston, John Ford, all that stuff too. It's like the legend is bigger than the actual films themselves. The quality varies. But Sam Fuller is a man who is really always interested in dialogue and writing, and really has his own style of street level grit. There's something not show-offy about his work that I've always really enjoyed, I've always liked, and there's something truly poetic and engrossing about his movies. Shock Corridor is probably the film of his that's the most highly revered, and I'm not as big of a fan of it as a lot of people are. It's a very well-made film. It's a very highly stylized film, and he made it on like a super micro, almost no budget. And it shows, but it's a very interesting, it's a film where he's experimenting with a high concept, and he has to execute it through ideas and through gimmicks, rather than just having tons of money to play with, where he has all these name brand stars, et cetera, et cetera. A movie like 40 Guns is one of the strangest and most beguiling Westerns, because it just literally does not give in to all of the standard types of shooting technique, all of the standard types of visual setup, and it just has this preoccupation with its own visual language that no other Western and no other film really has really tried to mimic. This use with with split screen, with telephoto shots. It's just a film very microcosmed into perspective, and The Naked Kiss could not be more different from that film. You just have these scenes that just end in these very startling and odd ways that just keep upping the ante of the emotional state of the characters. The film is all about emotional character development. It's all about the stasis of the characters. So, Mark, when you say this acting is really over the top,
correct?
It's hammy. I think that's almost a benefit. It's almost a strength of the film, because it is sort of this line between television, theater, and film acting, and it's meant to be on this sort of heightened perfect. And it is a woman's film. It's a film that's expressly about a prostitute who's trying to sort of embolden herself and trying to find meaning and cause and love and redemption and purpose in her life. And she's trying to not be a prostitute anymore. And there's a lot of stuff about shame, about class, about division, and just about gender in the film. That opening scene when her wig falls off just before the opening credits is one of the most startling moments I've ever seen in a film. And it's not because it's shocking. It's just such a bold, sudden visual motif, and it shows the pieces being put back together. And it's really showing a woman composing herself physically with her makeup, with her appearance, and she's sort of conning herself into believing the game, that she just has to keep this act up. She has to be the act. She has to give. She has to live the act. There's something really powerfully feminist about that film that I've always really liked. I've seen it twice, and there's certain shots in it that just have really stuck with me. There's a sort of really acidic, burnt-in look to the cinematography at times. There's these cutaway shots that almost seem to be made on almost like a low, like a really like a lower quality, like just a burnt resolution, like it was overexposed. these cutaway shots that almost seem to be what the characters themselves are glancing at in the foreground or in the background. Just as someone is leaving a scene or just as someone is leaving a setting, it's like something that they're noticing out of the side of their eyes, and there's a quick burnt-in telephoto shot. And it's moments like that in the editing and the filmmaking, the production, that I just think really is what distinguishes Sam Fuller, as having this type of cinematic psychology and this sense that in some ways was really ahead of his time, and it was just unique. It was just something you would see in a Sam Fuller film, and it's not like, oh, there are these recurring motifs that you'll see in every single one of his films. He seemed to have a unique perspective on all of his films, which I totally, completely love that. Like, you have, I would say it's a more standard studio film. China Gate from 1959 is an exceptional war film where there's not much war. It takes place during the Korean War, and it is just, it's just as melodramatic, but as good as it gets. Angie Dickinson is in that, and it's a film about class and race. It's just a really, really, really strong film, and it ends on a really violent, strong note, where all of his films are more about the emotional cost of violence more than the physical cost. And his films are quite violent, but it's more about the internal reckoning and the metaphysical reckoning, not just the sensation of bullets and guns and fire and bombast. The Steel Helmet, I would say, is now regarded probably as his best film in certain critical circles. Some critics, such as Richard Brody, consider that to be the greatest war film ever made. It's very much like Orson Welles in some ways. It's very similar to like his Macbeth, where it's shot on very highly stylized, surreal sound stages where it's like clearly shot on a set, but it's more like a play. And it just has this very aware sense of mise-en-scène, almost like what Lars von Trier was doing later in his career with his movies like Manderley and Dogville. It almost seems intentional that it has this sort of made-for-TV playhouse look to it, but nonetheless very, very brutal, unforgettable, and affecting films all the way around. So I'm glad you brought up Sam Fuller, Mark, because I've been thinking about his work a lot lately.
Yeah, well, the university brought up Sam Fuller, and I've got. Are you guys Mormons out there? You guys are Mormons. Hey, Phoenix has got his own religion, so I don't know what those guys are all. What do you? Well, you guys will figure it out. Yeah. All three of them are out there. That's kind of a contradiction in terms, but anyway. So Mark, the university, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was a university that presented Mr. Fuller, and again, like I said, in Cine East, they have a nice article on Fuller's early screenwriting career, and you guys have some intense stares out there. Yeah, we're out because we got it's like WGN used to be. The window to the world was happening, and you'd be on stage and so on and so forth. So, excellent.
So Mark, I'm finishing up my coverage of the Toronto Film Festival. So a lot of the films that were at Sundance and at Cannes are finally making their rounds. I got to see Mandy this week. I'll get to that if I have time. What an incredible film. I don't think there was much there beyond just powerhouse visuals, but when you have the visual and aesthetic language that's going on in that movie, you don't need much else. And it didn't have much else, but that was almost enough. It's just a feast for the eyes, and I was very happy with it. Mostly very happy with it.
And it's Mandy.
I also got to see Michael Moore's New Offering, and that was surprisingly very nutritious, which is not what I always expect from his stuff. I don't want to say like I'm critical of Michael Moore. There's always so much to pull apart. There's so much to dislike, but there's also so much to enjoy and to revel in. There's like all this. There's like stuff that like contradicts itself in terms of like the engagement. Like One minute I'm laughing, one minute I'm totally pulled in, one minute I'm totally on board with his argument, with his statements, with his politics, and the next I am just so not on board for any number of reasons. But it's a documentary filmmaker. He's a documentary filmmaker, and he makes. I don't want to call them documentaries because that's by technical definition that's what they are. But he's in some ways more like an editorialist. In some ways he's more like a reporter, and in some ways he's more like a narrative filmmaker. And he kind of loosely ties it together with this documentary format. And in some ways he has like this sort of like late silent comedian type shtick going on, and then in some ways he's a late night talk show host. You just have all these different diverse and divisive elements that do not always work together to create a strength. They do not always create a competent, complete whole, to my own opinion. I know that a lot of people that admire his work have problems with individual films, and oftentimes you'll talk to film people, I mean like serious film people, and non-serious film people, and if you ask them, well, what's your favorite Michael Moore movie? Assuming that they've seen most or all of his films, you're likely to get a different answer from a lot of people. And I think that that's an interesting aspect of his work, but we can get more into that later. Toronto had a lot to offer this year. I'm still going through the coverage. There's like the mainstream coverage of like what they want most publications to cover. And then there's this stuff that's like, because Toronto is the biggest film festival in the world. It's just, there's so many films, so much stuff covered. There's like the populist, mainstream, like they wanted to, and it's good mainstream. I don't mean that in any bad way. I mean, like, these are going to be ranked on the best films of the year list. These are going to be the films that, if they don't win Best Picture or Best Director, they're going to be like among the most talked about American-made Hollywood films of the year with the highest credentials of artistic credo. The films that are going to be remembered as artistic statements from Hollywood filmmakers at the end of the year, ones that are going to be garnered for acting awards, screenwriting awards, directing awards, etc. And at the very least are just sort of this step above. So of course, A Star Is Born, which is probably the biggest film that was shown at Toronto this year. It's probably going to be one of the biggest films of the year. And for in terms of films that are going to be nominated for Oscars and probably win awards, that's probably going to be the big moneymaker this year. It's a remake of a remake of a remake of a remake. It's sort of this mythology that's being passed on generationally with a torch. Like it has to be made every 25, 30, or 40 years or so to sort of rekindle its flame. And this film is a more direct remake of the Barbra Streisand, James Brolin film and Chris Christopherson from 1976. And so this is a more direct remake of that, which, considering that Barbra Streisand played the lead in that version, I would say that the next generation's Barbra Streisand in many ways is Lady Gaga. She has a very similar type of operatic range, a similar type of voice. She's crossed over into numerous fields of media. She's just as notorious, and she has just as much talent. She very much is sort of the next Barbra Streisand in many ways, so it actually makes sense that she be in this film. Bradley Cooper has directed and written it, written the screenplay with other screenwriters, written most of the music with Lady Gaga. It's been getting pretty across the board strong reviews with some fair criticism, but overall it's it's like a filmed musical. It's not like a musical with music with stop and go music numbers. So I'll definitely be checking that out. The Old Man and the Gun is what Robert Redford has been claiming is the last film that he's going to star in. It's about a man who has who forms a gang of a trio of aging robbers that they call themselves the Over the Hill Gang, and they go on a statewide crime spree based on a true story of a group of semi-retired criminals that went on a bank robbing spree around 1980. And there's a love connection between him and Sissy Spacek. And it's supposed to be just a very fine, very well-made movie. I'm looking forward to that. First Man is probably going to be one of the most talked about films of the year. That's starring Ryan Gosling. It's directed by Damien Chazelle, the director who gave us La La Land and Whiplash. So surely that is going to be a much discussed, much admired film, hopefully. everything that's been coming out of Toronto says that is the best or the second best film of any category that's been shown this year, mainstream or art house, underground, anything across the board. Even curmudgeonly film critics that have not wanted to give it their time have said that this is just a feat of a film. It's an art film for mainstream audiences, which is sort of what Damien Chazelle specializes in. He makes that art house mainstream stuff enjoyable, entertaining, and accessible to a more wide mainstream audience. He does not make these like morose, quiet, challenging, thought-provoking, inner-life art films. He makes films that are expressive, loud, and musical, and full of life. And apparently this film's about Buzz Armstrong and the feats, so the personal intensity, his inner push and drive to be the first man, and to be the first man on the moon, to be among the first on that mission. And so it's just a film about personal best. So super cool stuff there. Barry Jenkins of Moonlight fame and glory is coming back. He's got a new film called If Beale Street Could Talk. Just been hearing exceptional things all around, and it's what mostly the praise is that Moonlight was no fluke. Barry Jenkins is a masterful filmmaker and writer who is here to stay, and he's a presence that is not going to be pushed aside. He is a talent that will remain a talent, hopefully for years and years, with many offerings to give us. So looking forward to that. Steve McQueen, who directed Hunger and Shame and 12 Years a Slave, has come back with a more mainstream thriller about a group of widows. The movie is called Widows, and it's about a group of women who are left widowed after their husbands rob a rival group of something, a crime syndicate or something like that. And their husbands all get killed in sort of a freak accident, like an explosion or something. And they're out, the women, the widows, that most of which have no clue what their husbands were actually engaged in, because it was sort of like their off hours side, like most of them had gone legitimate, and this was like their last job, that most of them got pulled back in from the straight life to do this last job. They all got killed. That's how the film opens, is with this extended long heist gone wrong. And then you have like a great list of actresses that are in this film, almost all of them in lead roles, and the performances are just supposed to be top notch, and it's supposed to be a great heist film shown from the perspective of a non-caper caper. It's supposed to be just incredibly well made, extremely taut, and just brilliantly written and brilliantly executed. So really looking forward to that. The director of Son of Saul is back with another film shot in much the same style during the Hungarian Revolution of 1919. I'm sorry, might be earlier than that, 1910, before World War I came underway. And I don't know enough history about that era, but there was a huge uprising that was quashed by the government. There was like a giant massacre, and it takes place from the perspective of a woman trying to track down. The film is called Sunset. And it's about a woman trying to track down her brother, who is involved with a network of spies and is sort of leading multiple lives, and she is also just trying to like find out about an ex-lover. And it's shot in much the same style as Son of Saul, first person, sort of wandering Steadicam, lots of events, and hugely staged theatrical, sort of like massive amounts of extras. And nothing is focused on with our typical mise-en-scène of the wide shots or of the typical cinema language. Everything are these extended tracking Steadicam shots, mostly focused on the first-person individual. I've been hearing things that all the praise has unanimously been positive, but to varying degrees. Some people saying that they couldn't get into the story, they couldn't get into characterization, that never really pulled them in. But just this man's style of filmmaking is undeniable, that he has this sort of signature way of making films. And if this is going to continue to be the way he makes movies, there's a way that he brings these challenging, difficult historical events that involve large groups of people where he finds the focus on the individual rather than on just that large grand vista scope. It's the exact opposite of Gone with the Wind. It's like the event that's going on in the background, you only see glimpses and glimmers of it through the side of the frame, and it's again shot in the Academy ratio, where the spectacle is but a hindsight, like it is the halo around the edges of what the focus of the film is. So I could not be more excited for this film, because Son of Saul is just one of those grand things. You cannot ignore a film like that. Whether you like it or not, there just is something daring and new there. So Sunset is another welcome addition from what I've been hearing. There's a couple other films that I'm not going to get into that I had heard varying degrees of acclaim for. So yeah, those are the basics from Toronto.
Well, thank you, Gabe. That was a very bombastic and informed review of the proceedings up north. That was incredible, dude.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I've been reading like 3 or 4 different publications coverage of the events, and I didn't want to give an overview without having sort of felt like I'd read about each film a few times or really listen. And I was listening to the film comment. So, the film comments coverage of the festival. They did 3 podcasts about what they saw there and what left the biggest impression. And mostly they covered smaller films. They covered more independent and less highly talked about films. The one film that they did talk about on the film comment podcast that I did not read much about otherwise. The AV Club and the New York Times and the LA Times did not really go much into is Claire Denis's new film High Life.
Nice.
Claire Denis is an art film, challenging, hardcore art filmmaker for our times. She's very much in the same vein as Michael Haneke. She just has her vision. She goes for it, and I don't want to say she doesn't care what the audience thinks, but it seems to exist on that plane that she is making a film for uncommercial purposes. Now, that's obviously not true. All films have commercial prospects and purposes, but these films seem to exist on a plane where she, because of her reputation as being a filmmaker of high value and worth, now gets to make those types of movies where it's her vision, it's her voice, where she doesn't have to concede as much to what the producers are wanting to make. You look at a movie like Beau Travail, Let the Sunshine In. Who can even begin to explain how a film like that goes from concept to execution and then makes it to the screen in its final form? The woman just does not seem to compromise, and I love it. I've never seen a film from her that didn't, even if I didn't enjoy it, that didn't give me something so intellectually rich and satisfying and thought-provoking. Enjoyment is so secondary, is so inessential to the value of watching a film that engages you, that has its life, that has that energy, that has that wisdom and has all this burden and has all this necessity to it, where it must be watched. And she has a new one out called High Life, and it takes place in a somewhat futuristic. It's sort of the similarities that have been laid out are saying that it's very similar to Solaris, the Tarkovsky film from the 70s. Sort of very ethereal, very abstract, very poetic, very philosophical, and very strange. And Robert Pattinson is in it, who seems to have found a niche for himself as being a abstract, psychedelic art house filmmaker's toy.
As in Cosmopolis.
Thank you. Yeah, Cosmopolis, High Life, which I forget that I've seen that movie, and then when I'm reminded of it, I'm just like, yeah, really, is there another film like I'm sorry, not High Life, Good Time. I oftentimes forget about that movie, and then I think of like the great films from last year, and narratively, like just in terms of its ability to tell a story visually through all these different characters and the windings of narration and the bombast of just first-person spectacle. I just don't know that I saw anything that was crazier in the best possible sense of the word last year. To be honest, I'm a little hesitant about praising the film Mandy as much as I've heard from others, simply because something like Good Time, no matter how childish or how idiotic elements of the film are, I never feel like I'm in the hands of someone that's simply padding the space out. With a film like Good Time, made by it's not the Dardennes brothers. It's these other brother filmmakers that have made these masterful films. They made Heaven Knows What, and they've made other films that have been major contenders at the Cannes Film Festival. The Rothsey brothers, I think their names are. I know that I think they're either Palestinian or they're Middle Eastern. But they're brothers, and they just make these really strange, really visually just intoxicating films. So, this weekend I wanted to make sure I got in some good films to watch for the show, because I got kind of sucked into a number of TV shows. I've been watching American Vandal season 2, which just continues to be not only a great send-up of some of the problems with true crime procedural television, even though I love where a lot of these documentary series have gone and are going. It's a show that not only outdoes those shows, but also points out the major failings and the limitations of those shows while giving into them and actually expanding upon them, and also managing to be brilliantly hilarious and just engrossing and addictive in the same way that those shows are. Great stuff there. I'm trying to catch up with some of the Emmy winners from this year and some of the Emmy winners from last year even. So there's just too much stuff to even mention. But I did manage to get to the theater twice for Fahrenheit 11/9, Michael Moore's new film, which is about 11/9 refers to the date that Donald Trump was inaugurated as president. And it's sort of a timeline documentary where it goes from event to event to event to event. And it's the first of its kind for him, because he mostly looks at films through the prism of firsthand experience, where he looks at things from his, like, seemingly from his perspective as he's seen them, or narratively as he's thinking them, which of course is just complete nonsense. His films are extremely edited and extremely manipulative, and taken elements from here and from there, and what's going to get the biggest effect here. And that's filmmaking. That's not to say that that's not what documentary filmmaking is meant to be and is meant to do. So when I say manipulating, that's from my point of view. I'm not saying that's not what everyone should think. That's ridiculous. But I have my opinion about certain Moore films change over time. Like even without having revisited them, when I think about what was he really saying in that moment, or when I come across my own opinions and mores changing over the years, I think, no, you know what? Actually, that's bull crap, and that I don't agree with that, and actually that's wrong. There's more to that argument and more to that perspective than that. It's not that black and white. But on a humanitarian front, and in terms of just basic liberal principles of caring about other people, I agree with him in a very, like, I'm 22 and I'm going to college, and I believe that I can enact a change through, this one-dimensional idea of enacting change. I think that that's very noble. I think that's very wise, and I will always stand up for that type of grassroots altruism. Regardless of political affiliation, do something. You believe in something, don't just be a nihilist. Don't just be an agnostic. Don't just stick your head in the sand and say, well, everything's screwed up. Everything's messed up. Everything's so embedded in this system or that system, or people are too dumb, or the government's too nefarious, or my family's too far. That's just laziness. That's laziness, and that's a bad kind of self-centeredness. I like the fact that Moore is, yes, he's profiting from these films, but he set up his own production company. He self-releases these films now, and he makes smaller projects in the sense that they're not as he doesn't want films to be released by major corporations anymore, because he noticed that there was he was having to concede the producers. He was having to concede the distributors. Lionsgate had changes that they wanted him to make to Fahrenheit 9/11. United Artists had requests about changes to be made to Bowling for Columbine. And these are films that he won Academy Awards for. These are, he won the Golden Palm at Cannes in 2004 for Fahrenheit. He has won 2 of the highest awards in film that you can attain. In his field, he's won the 2 greatest awards that you can attain as a documentary filmmaker. Very few documentary filmmakers will ever win the Golden Palm at the Cannes Film Festival. It's almost unprecedented. It just does not happen very often. So he's reached a maximum of success that I find very cool. But he continues to interest me. Here he is with this new film, and I went in very skeptically and very, with this very reticent sort of unsure vibe of eagerness, because I'm always, at the very least, he's always humorous, he's always engaging, and I like him. And I'm always very cautious about the way that I like him, because he pulls me in a way that I know lets my guard down, and it pulls my intellectual guard down, and it pulls my moral guard down. And it's like, with that type of college liberalism, it can be a little too easy to get on board with the link of events of this and this plus this equals this, and that's the way it is. And that's not the way it is. Those are opinions. These are not always facts. And then stating, no, here are the facts, and it's just a bunch of opinions, it's just, and I usually didn't recognize that about a lot of his work until I either revisited or I rethought about it. And that type of thinking, whether I agree with the thoughts or not, is dangerous, and it's dangerous to my perspective, but I just think it's irresponsible, and I think, honestly, it's not worthy of praise. I don't think it's something to want to attain. It's not something noble. So those are elements that I've always been a little uneasy with in Moore's filmmaking, and he is louder and more assertive and more manipulative, I guess I say that in quotation marks, in this film than ever, and it's probably his best film. As I'm watching the film, and as I'm more increasingly aware of the fact that he's stating certain opinions as almost a fact, I'm agreeing with those opinions as fact, because he's using more subjective evidence, but he's admitting that it's subjective evidence, that it's his subjective opinion, instead of just stating it like it's this open truth. I really, really appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that he criticizes himself in the film for being part of the pawn of the game. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's meta, my man. Thank you.
Yeah. He comes out and says, I am part of the game. I am a celebrity. I am a personality who is here to feed you an opinion that either you hate me because of my opinion and I feed off that, or you love me and I literally get fed off of that.
Yeah, I'm sure he eats well.
Yeah, I do appreciate him stating the fact that he is an entertainer. First and foremost, he is an entertainment personality.
Though I must admit that steak burrito, that frozen steak burrito, was killer. But I got one left, man. So I'm happy as heck, man. Mega. Gabe, man. You rock, man. You really have a cute way of bringing in the summation. I mean, not just a summation, obviously the exposition of all the necessary elements of describing, the subject matter at hand, and then you bring it to a fulfilling conclusion and just lay it on us throughout, man. Thank you.
Mark, absolutely. I went to go see Mandy. Mark, I'd be curious to hear what you and And Leela, I have to say about it, Lila, I'm sorry. Lila or Leela?
Lila.
Lila, thank you. Okay. I'd be very curious because both of you have interesting takes on film, and you both, and you both have like this very lived-in sense of the artistic film sense. And it is a feminist film in a certain vein. It's one of the most psychedelic films I've ever seen. It's one of the 4 great visual psychedelic film experiences I've ever seen. Enter the Void being one of them, the Forbidden Room being another. Guy Madden's Film of Film. I don't know that there is a more visual experience than the Forbidden Room. I have yet to see a movie that ever does what that film does to the viewer, if it's even possible. I mean, that film cannot be watched in more than like 10 or 12-minute increments. It's just too much. But it's incredible, whatever it is. Irreversible, Enter the Void, The Forbidden Room, Good Time. Obviously, there are many other sites, like Yellow Submarine and 2001: A Space Odyssey and Vanishing Point and some of these other films that like have like psychedelic narrative elements and psychedelic visual elements. And Mandy is just a film that seems like it was made in 1983 on a ton of acid. And it is just a visual feast of beauty. And
really?
It's dark.
So we should be checking it out?
I don't know. There's not much there.
Okay.
There just isn't much of a story. There isn't much character development. It doesn't really mean anything. It's a powerful. There are these 3 scenes that are so powerful, though. Like, I was destroyed. I was crying so hard in the theater. Nicolas Cage does. I've defended him on the show. I know I was talking about him on the show last week. I was taken to new heights of my appreciation for him. There's a scene, and it's not through this wild, over the top. It's through silence and through restraint. It's the look in his eyes, under his eyes, behind his eyes. I have rarely been so emotionally affected during a film as I was during one sequence in this movie.
Well, I mean, this is resounding in your support of it. So
it's like the soundtrack is done by Johan Johansson,
okay,
who tragically died about a year ago. And this was the last film score that he did. And he, as a musician, has this really beautiful, profound sense of abstract, ambient, drone, doom. He did the soundtrack for Arrival, which is probably the most praiseworthy element of that film. I have major issues with that movie. It's a very good mainstream art film. I just don't think that all of its very fine, very nice, very arty, and very string theoried components add up to more than a bunch of components, which is kind of the complaint that I have about Mandy, is the fact that it's a bunch of really nice, really pretty, and really bewildering and beguiling and just amazing elements. It is gorgeous. It's directed by the same gentleman that directed Beyond the Black Rainbow, which is another film that is just unforgettable. It is an undeniable visual work of art. I just don't know that it adds up to more than quirkiness.
Okay.
And so anyway, I'd like to hear your opinion on it in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you've certainly piqued the interest of not only myself, but I'm sure the audience at large.
Yeah,
and
it's going to be the cult film of the year, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, just the visuals, the violence, the acting. There are these ambiguous, open, just bizarre scenes. Whether you're into psychedelic drugs or not, whether you smoke pot or not, it's clearly adorned for a certain type of audience that's into stuff like that.
Stoner's delight is what you're saying.
But yeah, I mean, this is an Orange Sunshine movie if there ever was one. But
you ever see Blue Sunshine?
I did, and I'm a half big fan of it.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit that because I don't even know what the heck that was about. It's all a big blur. But this isn't going to be a big blur, Gabe, as we call the curtains into play, as they are slowly but surely going to come down on this latest event called Cinema Fireside. What's your reaction to
Absolutely.
that?
Well, I think Richard Nixon got impeached, and he died a lonely, angry bastard.
I disagree. He probably had a good time going out. I can actually remember sitting in my living room as he boarded the helicopter. It was kind of weird. But yeah, it's fascinating if you read the transcripts. And I've read All the President's Men. I've also read the book by Woodward and Bernstein's City Editor, which is equally fascinating. And I've also read John Dean's account, Blind Ambition. Watergate is eternally fascinating.
Yes,
that's totally cool.
That's the book to read about Watergate. It's more than All the President's Men. It's Blind Ambition, and that book has sort of unfairly been kind of shadowed under over the years. But I could not agree more.
Gabe, thank you so much for your intellect and your enthusiasm, your heart and soul.
Absolutely, Mark. Mark, likewise. Thank you. It's just so great to come back every week and to do this with you and to just, to hear this light burning out of burning from Milwaukee. It's just so comforting. It's great stuff.
Okay, my man. God bless you, Gabe.
God bless you too, Mark. We'll see you.
See ya. Really appreciate Gabe's presence. Never take that for granted. Thank you so much, Gabe. And Gabe's got a very sharp, quick mind. He's young. He's agile. And as you grow older and so on and so forth, I mean, there's people that are very sharp right to the end. I mean, it's all a case of genetics, ultimately. And looking at the clock here. So, yeah, I mean, during the show, I got totally burnt out. And I don't know if there's going to be any reading tonight, maybe slight reading. It's the Halloween season. I can think of John Epstein's 28 offering, The Fall of the House of Usher, running over just over an hour to maybe kick off the Halloween season. Because you got to keep it short. I don't think that's going to happen tonight. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, definitely. I like the running time. I like the year. I like all the elements seem to be lining up for 1928's The Fall of the House of Usher. And maybe, what else is to be seen? The Old Dark House. I don't know if that's... Yeah, I haven't... so yeah, I think we're going to get into a lot of 40s Haunted Mansion flicks. And I think I don't know if it's too... I think it's The Ghost of Mr. Chicken has to be revisited maybe next year because I think we just saw it last year. So we'll see. I'm also keeping my eye on the clock here. We got like about 52 seconds left to go. So yeah, Halloween season, basically looking at early 70s terror films, things that occurred between Last House on the left, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, some of the more obscure films beyond those. If anyone's has knowledge of those, certainly send them our way for sure, because they have to be checked out. And obviously there's the holy trinity of Nosferatu, Haxan, and Vampire. That's definitely where you want to start your Carl Theodor Dreyer, my friend. Vampire, correct. If you haven't seen it, see it. I'm surprised at you, incidentally. Okay, thanks everybody. We will be on at the same time next week on WXR WLP 104.1 FM Milwaukee. To hear past episodes, visit riverwestradio.com/shows and click Cinema Fireside.